Hello and welcome to Ensemble Conversations with me, Mark Kilmurry. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to introduce today's guest, Sandra Bates. Hello, Sandra.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, I'm great.
How's isolation been treating you?
Oh, I rather like it. That sounds so terrible, doesn't it? But it's rather nice because nobody hassles you about what you're doing.
Yes.
So if you're not doing it, if you're sitting at home and listening, I don't read anymore, listening to a book, I don't have any guilt about it because there's nothing else you can do. So, hey, pretty good. It would have been, it's a great way to listen to plays.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is a good way to listen to plays, and a lot of people are watching and engaging with theatre online, which is fantastic, really, when you think that need to see theatre is so great that people will still watch it in a different format. Yes. That's wonderful.
Yes. Of course, it'll never be the same as being there with an audience. Nothing can compare with that.
No.
And so I know that everybody like me is desperate to come back here and see a show.
Desperate. I think it was 85% of people said as soon as doors open, they'll be back at something live, theatre, concert, film. That's quite high. I mean, as long as the message is safe, and then that's a great thing. And Sandra, you were artistic director for 30 years. You had started with Hayes and working with Hayes in acting classes. When it came to you to take over the theatre, and I know I've asked you this before, but it's one of those things that interests me hugely is how did you go about it? Because you'd worked with Hayes, you knew what Hayes was doing and you knew his philosophy, but how did you decide what you wanted to do as Sandra Bates, as the new artistic director? It was a new direction, but it was yours.
I've never thought about it like that. I suppose I had enjoyed all this stuff Hayes had done, so I wasn't really thinking along the lines of going in a new direction. It seemed to me that you get the very best plays you can do, that you know the audience are going to enjoy, and then do the best productions you can of them. And I don't know that was... it didn't take a great brain to work that out.
No. But I think also you then started the subscription system. You had a lot of other financial regard for the future. And I think that was also, as well as the artistic, it was something that you had to start and work, that worked for you.
Yes, I think I was a bit lucky because I came from, I had been a pharmacist and had worked in pharmacies all my life and and I liked the business side of it. I actually enjoyed making the financial side of it work.
Yes.
And we were in severe financial stress. Really, it wasn't really Hayes' fault. It was simply that we had rebuilt this theatre. We'd been over at the Opera House, and while this theatre was completely rebuilt, and the state government at the time agreed to meet the costs dollar for dollar, and which was very generous of them, but we couldn't raise ourselves. I think it was $1.5 million, and they gave us $1.5 million. And we had not raised the $1.5 million, let me tell you. And so we were rather badly in debt.
Yes, right.
And, so it was a tough time financially. And so I think I was very keen to start a subscription because it's terrible, isn't it? But it gave you money in advance.
Yes. Yeah, right.
And it gave me something sure. And the reason Hayes had always been against it is he said it means it's the timeliness of plays. Something is an issue right now, and you want to put the play on because it's an issue right now. But as I said to him, well, actually, by the time you you know, a play's coming to the end and you're looking for a new play, and you think of a new play that is hugely timely, and then you get it, and then you rehearse it, and then you put it on, the timeliness is not necessarily still there. That's because right. We change our what is happening. Well, I think it was always the story, wasn't it? Newspapers, tomorrow's fish and chips.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's always nice when if it's a critical review that you don't agree with, it's tomorrow's fish and chips, you know, and not even existing for that anymore. Online's harder to put fish and chips into a newspaper. But yes, no, and also I think the subscription then grew because I guess it started as a small amount when you first introduced it, and then over the years it would grow and grow and grow, and meant that you had more financial security. Yes. Yes, it made a big difference to know, because then also you'd see how many subscribers you've got. You can make the production do it a bit more cheaply if you have to. Yes. Because you know you're not going to get the audience. So for example, the very first time I got a David Williamson a new play that he'd written, and he'd promised me he'd write a new play for us. And it finally turned up, and it was Face to Face. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. So I started to read it. He didn't have a cast list at the beginning. He just had written the play. And I started to read it, and there was a new character and another new character, another new character, and another new character, and another new character. And I'm thinking, well, I have to do doubling up. And I finally worked out that there was no doubling up because there were 10 in the cast, and they were all on stage for the whole time. Yeah. Now, you would well know that there is no way we can do a play with 10 in the cast. We can't. No. It's just not financially viable. You just couldn't. If you were full every night, you still couldn't break even. Make it work, yeah. So it was quite good. It made me think, and I quite like this. It makes you think laterally. And I thought, well, if we didn't have a set designer and a costume designer, and if we didn't have a set or costumes, this is how much we'd save. So I worked out, well, the best way to make that work was to have it that this conference that was happening, that it was as though this group of people had hired the Ensemble Theatre. So there was no reason for it not to look exactly like the Ensemble Theatre, which meant I used the chairs from the restaurant. So everybody knew that that's what happened. So you adjust to it quite well. And then I said to the cast, we're not going to do costumes. You can wear whatever you like. And I said, depending on there were 3 people in it who had money, the characters, and the other 7 didn't. Yes. So I gave the 3 who had money a little bit more to go and buy whatever they wanted, and the others a lot less because they didn't have much money. And I said, if you want to wear your own clothes every night, that's fine. And you keep the money, that's fine. And you just do it yourself. You look after your own clothes. It was the most extraordinary sort of experience. And I'd almost worked out that we really had it resolved, except we still couldn't quite make it work financially. So then I thought, if we don't have a stage manager, we could do it. So everybody said to me, can't possibly do it without a stage manager. How can you do it without a stage manager? I said, I reckon we can. So the guy who played the moderator of the thing, I gave him an extra $100 a week, or $50 a week, I think. And he set up the chairs at the beginning, which is what he would do if he was running and we had an old lighting board down on the stage. And when all the audience were in, he changed the lights over, and of course there was no announcement about phones. No. So I said, well, the way for us to handle that is for the moderator to turn off his phone, and then we had 3 people in the cast, one of whom was a bit slow finding their phone to get it turned off before. And that was when the house was at half, and everybody like lambs turned off their phones. Yeah, it was great. And there was one guy that was a latecomer in the actual play, so he stayed up in the stage manager's office
And when we got the front of house clearance from Jim, he came on. So we actually didn't need a stage manager. So I think the ensemble's always had that ability to adjust to what you have.
Yes, and Face to Face was a thrilling production, and what that meant, what you did there, was to bring it to the audience. So I felt when I was watching it, I was part of this team, because they're real people, they're on a real stage in a real theatre, and the reality of the play hit even harder, I think, to the audience and to those watching it, because we were all part of this same conversation, and it was absolutely riveting theatre.
And I remember during the previews, someone came up to me afterwards and said, because we didn't give out the programs till they were leaving, to get that idea that they just hired the theatre and what have you. And this lady came up and she said, Sandra, that was such a fabulous idea to use real people. Actors could never have done that.
Well, there you go. That's better than any review, isn't it? That's brilliant. Sandra, there's a philosophy, though, that carried through from Hayes Gordon and still is from you to me too, which is that no-star system of the Ensemble Theatre. How has that developed over the years? And I know we still stand by that in terms of listing actors alphabetically, and we never say starring or this person starring in a play. How was that passed on to you, and what do you think of the idea of that?
Well, it was passed on to me, I thought, by Hayes, but I already knew the system, so I didn't ever discuss it with him. No. I just did it. And after a while, I had a play where somebody was making a terrible fuss. They wanted star billing. And I said to Hayes, I'm not quite sure how to handle this, but I said, I know you feel very strongly about the no-star system. He said, Sandra, I don't feel strongly about it at all. He said, I wish we could do it. Right. He said, it's a great way of promoting the theatre to have somebody there who's starring, but he said it causes all this grief. Mm. And he said, immediately you say there's a no-star system, there is no grief.
Yes.
And so, I went back and handled that situation and said, well, this is what it is. It is alphabetical order, whether you like it or not. That is the way it is. And everybody accepted it. Yeah. And so it just actually makes it easier. But philosophically, Hayes he'd come from New York. Mm. He didn't have but I still believe that it works really well because it makes everybody a team. Yes. It's a team effort, and I think it works better.
And the word ensemble incorporates all of that.
Yes.
And it's an exciting way of looking at a team. Yeah, and
he also had this thing of no applause at the no curtain calls.
Oh,
he was very strong about that. He didn't like curtain calls. Right. He said what happens is the audience are left with the play, with the production, with the story, and when the actors come out, it breaks that magic. And he wanted them to leave the theatre with that magic intact. And I got that, and I did it for quite a long while, and particularly where an actor has died at the end of and then they come out for their curtain call. I got what his philosophy was about it, but the first time I questioned it was when someone came up to me and said, I just feel I want to thank the actors. I want to be able to thank them for the experience I really want to do that. Yes. And then another person said to me, I just thought the actors couldn't be bothered coming out, and I feel a bit, they couldn't be bothered. They were just so keen to go home. So there were a number of reasons I thought it's worth trying it.
Yes. And I agree. I'm always saying to actors, come out again, second time round, because I think you're right. It's saying thank you to the audience for applauding, really, and bowing and taking that applause.
That's absolutely what I've always said to cast, and you do too. Yeah. You are thanking the audience for going up, because without the audience, we're nowhere.
No.
And it's lovely to get an audience that are really appreciative, and it is a two-way street.
Yes,
and I think it gives a chance to do that.
Yes, indeed. And also, Hayes also introduced into the country the idea of a different way of acting. It was called method then. It's become the way of acting now. You couldn't think of approaching a character or a way of performing without these set of tools. And that came through the ensemble studio, but also from Hayes, from New York, and from the American theatre. And that was your philosophy too.
Yes. It was groundbreaking in Australia. We simply had the, or dare I say it, the kind of English thing of acting, and you when actors came on stage, they were clapped, and and it was very beautiful voices, but a lot of gestures and making entrances, making exits. They weren't real people. It was interesting theatre, but you knew you were watching actors, and you had to appreciate the actors. Whereas this was a whole new way of you became involved, and you forgot they were actors, and you're there on this. And of course now you wouldn't see anything else. No. Nobody. It was a change, and it was Stanislavski. It came across from Russia, and Hayes' training was in method, and he added his Bordonian stuff to it, and I think probably I added my Batesian stuff to it, because I think the things develop. That's what happens, and it develops differently. And so the training that I had from Hayes, acting-wise, after a length of time with actors, I worked out that part of that thing, which you would understand really well too, is the emotion, say an emotional depth that is required from the actor, and then to work against it.
Yes.
Sometimes that's hard to find that emotional depth for it's that character might feel it, but you don't have a similar, you don't have the depth of feeling about that particular as an actor. And I kind of realized that actually it's the amount of adrenaline that's being released into your system from whatever that deep emotion is. And it doesn't actually matter. So if you're not a jealous person, but you are an angry person, it's very easy to work out something that makes you really angry. And it's the amount of adrenaline. Yes. And that's all that matters. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting thing to discover that I think helped actors.
Yes. Well, when I first worked with you on Japes, which is one of my all-time favourite theatre experiences of all time, I remember those conversations that you call referencing, because there was I was doing something, you said, think of this. And I said, but I don't know if I am thinking that. You said, no, but it's putting something in your head, because then you're thinking, and you're not just empty and doing it because you've been told to do it. And it was a revelation of, oh, right, okay, it may not be completely the correct thing for now, but it will help me choose the correct thing for when. So what the audience is seeing is a thought process.
Yes. Yeah. But you're thinking it through, and it doesn't matter that it's not exactly that situation.
Yeah.
You're and I notice it. I used to notice it all the time when actors weren't referencing something, and the audience know it. The audience don't know the words that are being used, but in terms of ways of working, but they can tell the difference if somebody's not there in the moment every second of the time. And I think that because the ensemble's so small, I think you and Hayes and I have managed to almost all the time have that happen. And so it's rewarding.
It is. As an actor, I remember one performance, and I had to get really angry with the other character on stage, and over my shoulder were a couple of well-known faces, and that's sometimes the beauty and also the awfulness of being so close to an audience. And I remember trying to impress them rather than talking to the character on stage, and completely pushing it too far. And I felt it snap. Suddenly in performance you go, okay, I've lost this, I've got to bring it back. So the idea of it being real and being truthful as much as you can in those situations is always best, because if you're trying to reach for a reaction or someone to enjoy what you're doing, you've lost it. You've lost it.
yes, yes.
Sandra, just talking about performing for you, then you and Lorraine Bailey decided just before you were going to retire to actually perform together in a play. Can you just talk about that and how that felt to you, having been behind the other side of the desk, as it were, for all that time, to then suddenly be on stage with your great friend and fantastic actor Lorraine Bailey?
Yes. Well, let's say I was rusty. That's the mildest. And also, in terms of Law loved this. She was a really well-known actress, and I was no one. But it was the alphabetical system, and if she had spelled her name Bailey the way everybody else spells Bailey, she would have been B-A-I, ahead of B-A-T for Bates, but she's B-A-Y. So I was ahead of her. I laughed. She said, "Oh, well, that's the rules. Let's stick with it."
That's right.
But we both started with BA. If she'd been A, she'd been ahead of me.
Exactly.
So we had a lot to laugh about all the time. But Lorraine was so good. And when you were saying with the acting too, for me, doing it with Lorraine, she is so concentrated all the time. She never lets anything interfere with she's incredibly, and when we did it the first time, we were doing it, and I hadn't acted for a while, and I was the artistic director now, and it was a Thursday morning, it was schools, and it was on the HSC syllabus, and the garbage bin people came round. And how many times had I said to them, "You are not to empty the garbage bins on Thursday morning." So I am in the middle of a long monologue and hearing that garbage out there.
Yeah.
And, you can't help yourself. I strayed away, and Lorraine saved.
Yes.
So the lovely thing too is to have actors who working with other good actors, and mostly we all have really good actors. They help each other out, and that helping each other out is what turns it from being good theatre to magic. I'll just give you an example of that. When we did The Petition, and we had Betty Lucas and Frank Wilson, who are sadly no longer with us because they were playing really elderly people back then.
Back then, yes.
And Frank couldn't remember the lines. He was late 70s, and he really was having trouble. And Betty kept having to help him out. And we got to it was over Easter, and so we didn't work through 4 days. And Betty knew the spots where she had to help Frank out, and all of that stuff. And it was actually still the previews. And so we hadn't done one since the Thursday, and this was the Tuesday night. And it got to a point in the play where Betty lost it. She had never lost it. She never lost the lines, ever. And Frank's sitting there, he was also fairly deaf, and he's smiling away, he's all right, he's happy. Yes. And there's a silence, and he realises there's a silence, and he thinks, oh, maybe I should be saying something. And he looks at Betty, and Betty said the same lines again that she just said, but it was partway through her speech, and she just couldn't remember. And then she looked at him and she said, whatever his name was in the play, help me. And those big blue eyes with tears just beginning to brim. And suddenly, Frank was the hero. And after all this time of Betty helping him, it was reversed. It was the most magical moment. Right. And so Frank leapt in, but the trouble is he leapt in about 3 pages over. And they started going through they'd left out 3 pages, and you could see Betty thinking, there's vital stuff there. There's vital stuff there and she was over the panic. So she jumped back to her speech or to just the end of her speech. She went back to it, and then they were away. And I thought, well, what's going to happen when they get to the spot where Frank had saved it?
Yes.
And where we did half a page. I loved it. we got to that moment and Frank went, "Let me reiterate."
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. There you go. And then they just said the same bit.
Nobody in the audience knew, and the guy behind me, who used to be the speech teacher at the studios, turned to me at the end. He had tears rolling down his face, as did the whole audience, and said, "That is the most beautiful work I have ever seen."
Oh, fantastic.
Two actors genuinely helping each other out, getting through it, and magic happens.
Magic,
and
yes.
dare I say it, I've seen it a couple of times. I saw it once in a play I did called The Act, which had a guy called Mark Kilmurry.
That's right. And Daniel Mitchell.
Danny Mitchell.
Yeah,
and it's got to the end of the play on this particular night, and I love that this particular actor, Mark, apologised to me afterwards because it was so moving and the whole audience was so moved by this beautiful moment. And there's Mark saying, "I'm sorry, it went too far."
I can't remember that. Oh, good.
It was beautiful.
I loved doing that play. I love that last moment. And you're saying with trust with actors and just looking into Danny's eyes and knowing this, it feels like it's just the two of you on the top of the world, you know, in those moments of theatre. And it is magic. You're right. It's got such a magical feeling to it that you can never experience.
Magic, when that magic is happening between the actors, it absolutely translates to the audience, and they have sat through magic. It's pretty good.
Yes,
it doesn't happen all the time.
No, I did a play Auntie and Me with Betty, as you know, with Betty Lucas. I spoke for 2 hours. She had 5 lines and stole the show every night. She was wonderful, wonderful actor. Sandra, you must have many moments over the years of being at the Ensemble Theatre. Are there any that stand out for you that you remember thinking this is a special time or moment when you were as artistic director? Probably too many.
It's like, who's your favourite child?
Yeah.
And I'm going to upset people, but I do have a couple of funny stories that I'd like to tell.
Yes, please.
Funny ones. One was really before I was artistic director, but it's one of my favourite stories about Ensemble, and you've probably heard it before, but maybe the other people haven't, and maybe you haven't.
No, right.
We did, for the very first time, when it was first written, we did I Ought to Be in Pictures. We've done it 3 times. Hayes did it once, I did it once, and you did it once. So we're really, we know that, right?
Yeah.
And with Hayes' production, it was a Thursday morning, and we had an older audience, but also a school in that had come from the Southern Highlands. And the foyer was empty because they'd all gone in, and it was 2 minutes to 11. And somebody came out of the offices, just one of the staff, and there was a guy standing in the foyer in full bus gear, bus uniform with a cap and the whole bit, and standing there. And there was no in the box office at the moment because they'd all gone in. And she very sweetly said, "Can I help you?" I said, No, I'm just waiting for the kid. I just walked the school down, and she said, "Well, it's a couple of hours. You really want?" He said, "Well, I don't want to sit in the bus for 2 hours." And she said, "Would you like to see the show?" And he said, I've never been to a live theatre. I've never been. Can I?" And he said, "But I don't have a ticket." She said, Don't worry. It's now 1 minute to 11. Just go in. Just go in the doors. Go in those doors there. He said, "Where will I sit?" She said, any empty seat. Just go in quickly because it's about to go to blackout. So just go in and sit in any empty seat. What she didn't know was there was a full house. She had no idea. She worked in the office. So he goes in. The house is going to half, and he looks around, and there is no empty seat, except for the sitting chair on the stage. So he went and sat in the corner, this corner down this side.
Yes.
So he's coming down, and it's the only empty seat. So he sits in it. Of course, you would. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So he's sitting there in his full gear, and the lights come up, and it was Sharon Flanagan playing the girlfriend. And for those who don't know, the story is that this girl who's a teenager and wants to go into pictures, and she lived in New York with her mother. The parents were split, and her father is a screenwriter in Hollywood, so she decides she's going to Hollywood and she's going to live with her father. So, but she doesn't tell him. She just lands up there, and he's got a living girlfriend, and so the lights come up on the stage, and the doorbell's ringing, and the girlfriend comes across because the doorbell's ringing. She sees that there's somebody sitting in the chair, and she opens the door, and they have the little bit of conversation. So the two of them see this guy sitting in the corner,
extra person.
And Sharon said to the lass, "Oh, you should have told me you were coming. I would have come and picked you up from the airport." And the girl, the actual lines are, "It's all right, I came by bus." Quick as a flash, Sharon said, "And I saw you brought the bus driver with you." I just loved it. So not only did so then they had to work around it. So whenever they were supposed to sit in their chair, they went to the back, and he's looking around, he's loving it. He was loving it, he was laughing, he was having the best time. Jim comes down at the interval and said to the actors, "Look, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise he'd gone in there, and I'll go down and talk to him, and I'll put a chair up the back for him." And they got talking, said, "Well, it's not going to make sense to the audience because he's been there. How do we explain why he's not there?" And of course, the school kids were loving it because they didn't know their bus driver was one of the actors.
No, that's right.
So they were absolutely loving it. So he stayed to the end of the show. At the end, the cast got him up and he took his bow. And it's one of my favourites.
Fantastic, and it becomes a slightly Beckett version of that play, slightly surreal. Oh, fantastic!
People, all the rest of because the kids accepted it and were so excited that their bus driver was acting in the play.
Everybody else did.
And this guy at the end, the only thing is, they said, "Would you like to say something?" He said, "I think this has been the best day of my life." It's lovely.
They'll send a little letter saying.
The other story that I love, again, it's one of my absolute favourites, was we did double act with Nolene Brown and Barry Creighton. Barry Creighton had written it, and I hadn't met them before, and I directed it. And we had a great rehearsal time. It was such fun, and Nolene is the funniest, driest person in the world.
Yes. And
every time I'd say, "Oh, I love that line. I think it's my favourite line in the play," and there'd be a deathly silence. This is during rehearsals. And Barry'd say, "That's one of Nolene's." After I'd said it 3 times and they were all Nolene's, I thought, I'd better not say that
stop,
anymore. But it stopped. But then we were doing it again on a Thursday morning, and in that main block, in C row, which is a very long row, there was a little old lady sitting in the middle, and it was towards it was early in the second act, and she gets up. And she comes out, and I thought, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. You had a chance to go to the Luther Inn. Why are you doing this now? Because I was sitting right up the back, and we had no money. Have you heard that line before?
Yeah.
And so Nolene was supposed to have really glamorous clothes, and God bless her, she lived in the Southern Highlands. She had a friend who had this dress shop, and she said, "Oh, I'll use all the stuff from there. We just put a little sign in the foyer," and so she looked fabulous and had all these quick changes. We had nobody backstage to help them do the changes, so they had to do them themselves. And this was a 5-minute scene. And Nolene came on with this very smart jacket. And so she's doing the scene. And this little old lady comes out, goes down onto the stage and tucks in the dag tag of this jacket and goes back and sits in her seat. Well, the end of the show comes, and I went round to the dressing room with steam coming out of me. I could not believe it. 5 minutes, I just couldn't believe it. And Nolene's standing at the door with this huge grin on her face, and she said, "Oh, Sandra, I don't think you've met my mother."
And there she was. Fantastic. And what can you say to that? You can't say anything to that. That's, "Oh, hello." I know, that's beautiful. I wish I'd been there to see that. Sandra, it's so nice talking to you. The legacy stands. It's a great symbol of what can be done. particularly under your leadership, and I miss sharing an office with you. It's a thriving theatre, and it will be great to have an audience back soon. It'd be great to see you there too on an opening night. So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you again.
Aren't we lucky to
Yes.
have such a where we just have fun?
Yes.
We just have fun. How
Yes.
good is that?
That's right. There's no ego. It's about doing, as you say, doing good plays. And that's wonderful, and a great team to be with. I'm very lucky to have such a team with us during this difficult time. So, and also, as you'll be pleased to know, our subscribers have donated a lot of their ticket prices to keep us afloat, and they keep doing that and keep sending donations and having credits, and it's just fantastic. The theatre is part of the community, and it comes back to us, with love. So that's wonderful too.
And I suppose the other thing is once they come back, they will appreciate it because they haven't had it. That you'll appreciate it so much better. Look what's happened with people who've suddenly started to go to cafes, who went to cafes all the time.
Absolutely.
Suddenly they can't believe how lucky they are.
No.
And I think, the ensemble and all theatres will be more appreciated for the loss of time. So
Absolutely.
we've got very good times to look forward to.
Indeed, we have. Thank you, Sandra. It's been fantastic talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you very soon.
See you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Sandra Bates, it was great to talk to her and to have that conversation, and wonderful to be able to chat this morning. Next week we'll be back with another special guest. Thank you so much for joining us on these ensemble conversations. Again, thank you for your donations, as I just said, and thank you for your support. I can't wait to see you in a foyer. Come up and say hello. Thanks. Bye-bye.